about halfway loaded, thanks.
Okay.
He'll be here any second.
Bonnie, is Bob Euro in the waiting room?
No, he'll be here any second. He was delayed a couple minutes, but we have to do something else first, so I think it'll all work out. He expected to be here just about at 7 or a couple minutes after.
Okay, and we are live.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. 1 second. All righty. Okay, got to find the notification. Okay, thank you. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, and regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 5:39-1.5, I hereby declare this meeting of the Holmdel Township Planning Board to be open and announce that the adequate notice and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in notices dated January 23rd and May 13th, 2021. Notices were sent to the Asbury Park Press, 2 River Times, The Independent, and posted on the bulletin board and on the main access door to Town Hall, filed in the clerk's office and posted on the township's website. This meeting is being conducted on a remote electronic basis using Zoom with live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and will be archived on the township's YouTube and Facebook pages. As such, recordings of a public meeting are public records open to the Public Records Act. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or provide comments once the meeting is open to the public. At that time, if any member of the public wishes to ask a question or provide a comment, please use the raise your hand feature on the bottom or top of your screen, and you will be invited into the meeting by the chairperson, 1 at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability, and you will be sworn in and asked to provide your name and address for the record. You may also dial *9 if accessing this meeting by telephone. So at this point, all right. So, okay, at this time, I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and remain standing for a moment of silence for our first responders, our police officers, and it is EMS week. So first responders and police officers and the military who keep us safe each and every day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, item 1.
I'll call the roll call. I apologize.
Oh, yes, it's not, yeah, those things aren't on the agenda, so.
Yeah, I
sorry.
apologize profusely. Mr. Ackerson,
Here.
Mayor Bontempo,
Here.
Mr. Foster, Mr. Castaning,
Here.
Mr. King, Mr. King,
He's here, he's on mute.
okay. Mr. Nicholas, Ms. Plusas, Mr. Santana,
Here.
Mr. Emma,
Here.
Mr. Daly, Ms. Tomaso.
Here. Mr. Foster just asked me for the login information, so I did send it to him, so.
Okay.
Okay. Item 1, memorializing resolution. This was sent to you yesterday, I believe. 51 East Main Street, New House, Block 11.01, Lot 14, B1 zone. The applicant was granted approval in 2019 for a 2-story, approximately 3,000 square foot building, then was delayed in obtaining required permits related to a replacement septic system and on-site contaminant necessitating remedial action. Zoning protection most likely told by Permit Extension Act, but the applicant preferred that it comes with a board granted extension instead. So that's, you know, if you remember, he came before us, and because of COVID, most extensions are automatic, but he wanted it, he wanted a resolution and something in writing. So if I can have, if there's any comments or questions on the resolution. Seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll move.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who did the second?
Ron? Oh, Prakash? Okay, Prakash.
Okay, Mr.
Roll call, please.
Ackerson? Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
is Mr. Foster on? I know he was trying to get on. Can we let in Brian Foster, please? He's up here.
Allison, could you let Brian Foster in, please?
Yep, just looking for him in the.
Okay, yeah, he's maybe fifth from the top.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm on if you can hear me, guys.
We can hear you, Brian. Thank you.
We're doing.
Brian,
Yeah, go
Brian,
ahead.
we're doing the resolution for 51 Main Street.
I did for the extension.
Yes, we just need a yes
Yes.
or a no.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Castaning,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Here.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Mr. Emma.
Yes.
Mr. Daly is still not here.
No,
Okay, Ms. Tomasa.
yes.
Okay.
I'm going to seat Mr. Emmer for, I guess, Mr. Nicholas.
Okay.
Mr. Daly's not, but if Mr. Daly comes, then we'll see him for Ms. Plusas.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, we're gonna have the continued public hearing. Can we let in the professionals from Barclay Square?
We're working on it.
Yes, so do we have to tell?
I've been texting her.
Okay. Allison is working on that right now.
Anybody I don't recognize?
Andrew Ferranda, right? Isn't that the architect? We'll start with Neil Zimmerman and then he can help us.
Right. Louis Zugner.
Louis Zugner.
Ken Pizzo.
Yes.
Madam Chairwoman, our professional Brian Murphy may be on as well.
I didn't see that name, but we'll keep an eye for it.
It may be a phone number. I think he may be on his phone. I'll see numbers.
There's one that says Zoom user. We don't know who that is.
Find out if that's him.
And 541084, Steve.
Who is that?
There's some number 54154.
8084.
If that's him, if either one of those are him. I don't see Mr. Zimmerman.
He's in already.
Let in Mr. Zugner, Mr. Pizzo, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Ferranda, Mr. Foster, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name.
Malek.
Malek.
Yeah, nobody can say it. It's okay. We'll call him
Not
Steve.
even, no.
Call him Mr.
Sorry
Steve.
about that. Is there
Lou
anyone else
Zugner?
that needs to come in at this time, Chairwoman?
Did you let in Lou Zugner? Yes, okay. Okay, there you are. Mr. Zimmerman had some trouble last time. Can we hear you, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Good.
I know last time we had some audio trouble, so I just want to make sure we still weren't having them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, all righty. I think everybody's on. So item number 2, continued public hearing, Barclay Square at Holmdel, preliminary and final major site plan number 2020-1. A proposed 60-unit multifamily apartment building associated site improvements, Palmer Avenue, Block 52, lots 17 and 18. Property consists of 6.74 acres of undeveloped land in the AH-MF Affordable Housing Multifamily Zone. 48 of the proposed apartment units will be market rate units and 12 of them will be affordable units. This is not a 100% affordable housing unit. The 60 apartments will be contained in one building with 116 parking spaces proposed. So Mr. Zimmerman, who is Mr. Zugner going to need to have access to his computer for plans?
I don't know whether yes, I suppose he will. Yes, he's going to be our only witness, and I think it would be best if he had that access. Yes.
Okay, Allison, can you enable Mr. Zugner to be able to share his content, please?
Yes, I am doing that right now. Is that just for Mr. Zugner?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
Also, sorry to chime in. I heard from Mr. Murphy. He's under the phone number ending in 6054.
Okay, I don't see that phone number on our list of attendees, but I will keep an eye out for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll get to the bottom of it.
Could it be RB?
I'm sorry,
What's his first name?
Brian.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
So I see a number 541084. Is that
that's-
it?
No.
No.
Okay, Mr. Zugner, you should have the ability to share your screen now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mrs. Zimmerman, do you want to just give a, or one of you, do you want to just give a for a recap for those that are watching and listening? We did close public comment and public questions last year to the entirety of the application. Tonight's questions and comments will be focused on what Mr. Zugner presents, which is the turnaround for the ambulance and the mounding study. So, Mr. Zimmerman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As you indicated, this is a continued hearing. Since the last hearing, at the request and suggestion of the board, we have made a supplemental submission, and Mr. Zugner will be testifying tonight about that submission. Part of the submission were some cut sheets that showed a elevator cab with increased dimensions. This is something that the board requested. The ambulance corps thought was important, and so we agreed to do that. Since then, we've learned that the board would like to see architecturals as to how that larger cab will fit into the building. And I sent a letter today indicating that we would provide that between now and the next hearing. So that means, as you indicated earlier, we won't be able to have a vote tonight. We will bring the architect back at the next hearing, whenever that is scheduled, to testify about all the issues pertaining to the elevator. And we would ask that that hearing be limited to that issue, since we've gone through a number of hearings already.
Certainly. Same as this evening. Mrs. Zugner. So
Yeah,
go-
with that, I'd like to call Mr. Zugner, with the board's
Sure.
permission. He's already sworn. Do we need to
Yes.
swear him again?
So
No,
just a reminder
remind
that
him
everyone is sworn. Yeah.
Everyone's sworn in, and our professionals is yours.
Okay. Okay, Louis, coming off the last hearing, you made a submission to the board dated May 7th, 2021. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Would you briefly give the board an overview, a summary of what was in that submission?
Sure. And as the board knows, we talked about some of the key items that we wanted to address coming back to this hearing. And I'll describe sort of the 3 points I think the chairwoman had mentioned roughly. What I'm presenting right now on your screen, and hopefully you can see it, is sheet 5 of 18 of the plan set we resubmitted. One of the key elements in what we did, as you know, we actually have good headroom under the building, but in this gap from the last hearing, we found out specifics on Holmdel's tallest ambulance, and that tallest ambulance would not fit under the building in the garage. So what we've crafted is a widened space. So the straight space right here between the handicap spaces, which would normally be 5 feet, that's 12 feet in this plan. And that provides very easy, accessible turnaround or spot to pull in an emergency for an ambulance. We thought that was a good solution in that hopefully not too often circumstance, but an ambulance could turn around at that point. The second thing we did, there had been discussion on a number of basin and grading items through the previous several hearings. So we, in this plan set, addressed that. And those are the areas along our northerly property line here, of course, in the basin itself, and as it comes out to the street. We revised that grading throughout to ensure that all potential water, even in the biggest storms, has no chance of going over the property line. And the way we did that was to, for the 100-year storm, lower the water surface elevation. So how deep it would get in the pond. We lowered that. That allowed us to lower all the elements in the pond and ensure that all the grading worked properly. Through that, while we could have made it work in the basin alone, we heard all of the different comments and concerns, and we've added even additional storage up under the front parking lot so that we sort of have an added element of safety in terms of flood mitigation. I would note in what we resubmitted, there was one minor oversight. There was a date on the cover page of the new stormwater report that didn't match the other dates in the report. It just hadn't been updated, and we'll correct that. And then the third thing we had addressed, there was a request for us to do a groundwater mounding study, and we submitted a report on that. And there's sort of a quick explanation as to how that works. As you, of course, know, DEP enforces stormwater, and one of their key elements statewide is for recharge, or putting water in more frequent, smaller storms back into the ground as an ecological benefit to ensure we have water being infiltrated, not just running off of every property. The modeling that's done in this groundwater report is to essentially show how that happens. We obviously know when you recharge, you're putting water into the ground. So how does it happen? Does it impact things in and around the basin? And what I would say is the results of our report are essentially normal and as we expected. The number of the parameters that go into this report are quite conservative, so we're confident in the result. And it shows that there's water underneath the basin. We fill this basin with a small amount of water and a typical water quality storm, which is less than the 2-year storm. It infiltrates down, and the real impact's under this pond. This study shows that there's a cone, so what goes out beyond that, and imagine it as like a sort of a bell shape, right? It's significant right at the pond or the pond edges, and then it ebbs away in sort of a parabola, and then continues out at some smaller amount. And the intent of that is to look at, okay, do we impact things outside the basin? And essentially in our study, once you're out to 80 feet from the center of the basin, which is about 30 feet past the property line, any element of the cone is really negligible at that point. The idea is to study, based on DEP's specific criteria, is there a basement? Is there an area of surficial ponding that you could impact with this water? And there is no negative impact from this groundwater recharge that comes with this pond. And that's what our report shows. So those are the three elements: the plan updates for stormwater and grading, the groundwater mounding study, and then the ambulance turnaround. And that was what was in our resubmission.
And Lou, just for the record, what was the date you have to, did you correct it or you still have to correct it?
So there are a number of dates in the report that are correct, but the cover page was not updated to, I believe it was 5/7/2021 is the correct date. And the cover sheet still shows a prior date without a revision.
Okay, just wanted to note it for the resolution.
Okay, do we have any questions from members of the board?
Chairwoman, I do.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah.
Committeeman Santana.
Yeah, could we take the share screen off, or is it going to be there? It's a little distracting. So
I can take it off.
Maybe we can put it on if somebody else has a question.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Zugner. How are you?
I'm good this evening. How are you?
Good, thanks. So okay, I have a few questions. So let me start with the mounding report, the groundwater mounding report. As I understand it, you've created two scenarios. One, assuming a 4.6 permeability rate, and then you used an adjustment factor 1.62 to lower it, and did a second scenario. I'm assuming that the 1.62 is a standard industry factor that you use to take a conservative estimate?
Yes, there are a number of sort of parameters, that one included. And also you go through a process of determining what's the overall depth of the aquifer. The aquifer here is probably much deeper than what we've shown. We had actually dug into it a little bit. There were some other studies in the area that show it much deeper, but the borings we have on our site were at 19 feet, so we showed that. And the second analysis comes based on timing, sort of a modeling. You look at it in different time scenarios as well as just permeability.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that the 1.62 number, that's a crucial number based on the analysis that I reviewed. So I just want to make sure it's an industry, it's a number used in the industry to create a, wow. I didn't say anything bad about the dog. So it's a number that's used to create a conservative scenario, right? Is that the number? Could it be 1.72? Could be 1.82? Or is that a standardized number that's being used? Or is it a random number that's chosen?
So it's a conservative number. You can make different adjustments to this based on site criteria. And based on what we have, that was what we thought was the most appropriate and conservative number.
So there's no analysis behind using the adjustment factor, right? You just thought 1.62 would be a right number to use. Because I mean, that's a crucial number, and I'll tell you why. Because based on your...
Sorry, yeah, I mean, that's based on direction and discussions we've had with NJDEP. So we're not picking that number out of a hat. That's based on our interaction and experience with DEP.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you. So what I understood was the two scenarios. The second scenario lowers the permeability by the adjustment factor, which then shows what's the water height 90 feet out from the center of the basin, right? So the conservative estimate shows that 86 or 90 feet from the center of the basin, you'd have an inch of water standing based on this adjustment factor. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Well, yeah, I don't.
The bell curve.
I wouldn't talk about it necessarily. Your numbers are not incorrect, but it's not necessarily a two-dimensional. It's a three-dimensional picture, and it's over a time window. So you're looking at this cone over this time window, trying to see what's the impact. The cone itself is the significant piece, and then what you're talking about is in this bell curve. Yes, there's a trailing edge of a couple of inches, and how far out does that go?
Yeah. Okay. So the duration of the infiltration, which you also calculated, is within the 1.7 hours, right?
Correct.
So, okay. So I have a question on this, but before this, I want to make sure our engineer, Mr. Euro, has reviewed this report and he's okay with this report.
Yes, Councilman, my office has reviewed the report and we are comfortable with the information that has been provided to us.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Zugner, if you don't mind, let's go to the stormwater report, stormwater management report that you've submitted. And that's the document that's still dated February 18th that you just corrected. And if you could go to page 210 out of 248. Page 210 out of 248 on the stormwater management report. And it's in Appendix 1. It's titled Major Development Stormwater Summary. And there are 2 pages that appear to be an application form for the NJP DES permit. And if you could go to the second page of that form, the title of the form is Attachment D, Major Development Stormwater Summary. It's page 210 out of 248 in the Stormwater Management Report. Let me know if you're there.
Yep. One moment, I'm opening the file up. Okay, page 210, you said?
Yes, page 210 out of 248. It's part of Appendix 1. It's the second page in Appendix 1. It's an NJPDES application form. It appears to be that, with all the data related to this location.
I think I have appendix by letter, not number, right?
Oh, then maybe it's, what letter do you have?
Lou, it's Appendix I.
I, okay, Appendix I.
Sorry.
That was Roman numeral 1.
Okay.
Okay, you're in the second page of that? The second, yes. Okay. So if you go to the bottom this last section, the bottom section is titled Basin Specifications. You there?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 5 of that basin specification says design soil permeability is 3.4. Meanwhile, in your mounding report, you've assumed 4.6.
Right? These are different reports and different calculations based on different numbers. I don't know that they necessarily have to correlate to each other. Here, you're limited as to how much credit you can take for infiltration. They won't let you take 100% of infiltration credit in terms of how you infiltrate soil in the recharge analysis. There also are multiple different soil layers, each of which would have different soil permeabilities. We have numbers on different soil layers at different depths here. So
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So we're talking about the infiltration basin, and we're talking about the soil permeability within the basin. But everywhere in the stormwater management report, you can actually go to section, page number 166 as well, where you've used soil permeability as 3.4. The number you've used was 3.4. So I assume that means the soil permeability, which is one number within the basin, is 3.4.
Well, it's different numbers in different numbers in different soil depths, right? So depending on the soil.
On the surface, right? On the surface.
Well, the surface is replaced in the basin with sand.
So are you saying that the 4.6 number, so because my question is, I did not see that 4.6 anywhere in the document. I saw 3.4. So, and now my question is this, if you use the 3.4 number in your second scenario, the conservative estimate, where you're divided by 1.62, you would see that the water height 90 feet out is not 1 inch, it could be 2 inches. Or in other words, you could see an inch of water 150 feet out, which would put you at the doorstep of the home at Palmer Square. So my question is, you've got to show us where you got the number 4.6 from, because these are all crucial numbers. This is what decides how much water is going to be standing on the surface.
Well, I would disagree with you on the fact that 1 or 2 inches is not crucial, because there's either way, there's no impact to that building. That building does not have a basement. And the only thing you would study to see impact is the basement in that building. So whether it's 1 inch, 2 inch, 6 inches, doesn't matter. But I'd be happy to go back through and catalog how and what infiltration rates we used and what logs they came from on site.
Yeah, so a couple of things I'd like to know.
Excuse me, Mr. Euro, maybe you can help Mr. Santana understand this better. Because, you know, maybe Lou isn't quite, I mean, there's no basement, so there can't be a flood if there's no basement, right? We've already determined none of those homes have a basement in that area, so.
That's correct. And I believe if looking at the depth of the, let me just pull up one of the soil borings from the geotech report. I think we've identified Lou, what was the modeling or the seasonal high water table?
It's around elevation 23, which is about 7.5 feet deep. Again, an estimation when you're at that neighboring building to the north.
So they're talking about an increase in your groundwater elevation, which your maximum would be your seasonal high water table. So if it goes up by 1 inch or 2 inches, you're still greater than 6 feet below the surface of the ground as you run 80 feet out from the center of the detention basin. So in my experience, in my opinion, there still will be no impact to any of those adjoining buildings, especially since there are no basements in the adjoining townhomes. They are on slab.
But Mr. Euro, isn't there standing water, 2 inches of standing water 90 feet out?
No, that's
over the surface?
It's 7
No.
feet below the ground.
It's 7 feet below the ground. This is all being
I see.
infiltrated.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So I'd like to have some, if you could explain why 4.6, why 1.62, that would be helpful, because it seems like these numbers, the 4.6 clearly did not come out of the stormwater report. The number there is 3.4, and that's important. And the second one is I'd like to understand why 1.62 at some point. So I'll keep moving on in the interest of time. I have a couple of reports, a couple of questions from the Terracon report that you submitted. If you don't mind, I'll go through them. The first question I have is in the Terracon report, under the executive summary, there are 4 bullet points which are their key recommendations. I'd like you to let us know if you've addressed all 4 of them in the exec that's mentioned in the exec summary. Actually, not 4, but I'm sorry, 7, but you can start with the first 4 on the first page, and then the pavement area where they specifically highlighted borings were not performed within the paved areas of the proposed development, that bullet point.
Which page are we on? I'm just opened this report.
So I'm on page 4 of the Terracon report. The title is Executive Summary. On the first page, there are 4 bullet points, and the next page has 3. So if you could address the first 4 bullet points to let us know if you've accounted for all those, or if you've implemented all those, or
This is
have plans to implement them.
This is a report with recommendations for a prior building based on how to build the foundations for that building.
Madam Chair, I mean, this is an affordable housing project that's in the town's fair share plan. I appreciate the concern, but like at some point, the continued requests become cost generative, which we are not able to impose on this applicant, unfortunately, by law. You're not I understand your concerns, but at some point, the continued requests become cost generative, and I'm concerned that you're putting the township at jeopardy.
I'm sorry. I have a problem with this. If you send me a report to read, I'm going to read it. And if there are recommendations in there stating these have to be considered, I have to ask whether they've been considered or not.
They have to do with construction of the foundation for the building. We don't have an approval yet. No one's considered how we're building the foundation yet.
So that's kind of outside our jurisdiction.
No, I don't understand that. If this Terracon report was submitted as part of this plan, it should be considered.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. They're submitting everything to us. Respectfully, they're submitting documentation to us, but at the end of the day, there's a limit to what the planning board is entitled to have jurisdiction over. If this is a foundation issue, that's a building code and construction code issue. That's not a planning board issue. So understanding your concerns, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, there are limits to what you're entitled to ask for. And we've been down this road, and the items were the mounding analysis, the turnaround for the ambulance, and the elevator. That's it. The rest of it is not under our jurisdiction at this point.
I'm sorry.
I would respectfully request the attorney to jump in at some point, but this is an affordable housing project that's in our fair share plan, that's in our settlement agreement, and there are limits to how much they're expected to produce.
I cannot disagree more, and I tell you why. They should not have submitted it to us. If this is not part of our jurisdiction, why did they submit it to us?
Mr. Santana, Bob Euro, I believe the reason the report was submitted is he initially just submitted some soil logs dated 2015, and you questioned that they did not have a signature on them.
Right.
So I believe Mr. Zugner, and he can correct me, submitted, this was the report which had the signature from the biotech firm that contained the soil borings. So I think it was submitted as a request to one of the other questions at a previous hearing as to why those originals didn't have signatures. Now the soil logs are contained within this report with the cover signature by the engineer who performed those duties.
Okay,
I think that was the intent for the submission of this report, not for us to dive into the meats and the guts of the report and how they're going to build whatever building is going to be done on the site.
okay, it would have been helpful if that report had a preamble to it saying that these are the only things to look at and not this item, that it's not part of our jurisdiction. Obviously, if you send a report.
Thank you for being so thorough. And now we know going forward, and we'll make sure that when we send you something, I think the rest of us understood that. So we tend to forget that you're a new member, and we will make sure going forward that you are educated on what you need to read and not read. But thank you for being so thorough in reading the entire report. Marty, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, and if you have something, you ask a question, but as the witness indicated, it's with foundation, it's a construction issue. So that does kind of bring it back into where we are. And as Bob mentioned, why it was submitted, obviously, we've had so many meetings now, maybe we've all forgotten, but that's why it was submitted. And in fact, we don't get involved with the detail of foundations. It's just something we don't do. But I mean, look, if the witness wants to answer the question, they're more than welcome to if you ask it. But I think he did answer the question. Unless he has anything else to add, it's probably something we should move on from.
I'd like to be heard, Madam Chairwoman, on just one point, because I'm a little disturbed by the characterization by the planner just then that not once, but twice utilized the fact that this was an affordable housing project in some way to justify whether questions can be asked or not. This is a site plan, and questions are, and I'm taking no position on the line of questioning that was just discussed, but the board should not be confused into thinking that the fact that this is an affordable housing project excuses its jurisdiction here on site plan.
No one's thinking that, Steve, and we'll worry about our planner. I don't think if anybody has a concern with what she said, they will chime up, but she's protecting the board. That's what she's doing.
Understood.
Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Santana, do you have any other questions?
Not for Mr. Zugner. I have questions on the elevator, but I'm fine with this. I'm fine with the.
All right, that'll be next. That'll be at the next meeting because we didn't get the architecturals. Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Zugner, I just have a quick question again. So when you come in about the ambulance, and just so you are aware, that's not our tallest ambulance. All our ambulances are that size. We are quite a ambulance a first responder, volunteer first responders. So, but that's open and it gives you the opportunity to turn around and come back out, right? The half moon, for lack of a better term.
Correct. It would be like a loading space, and we've separated parking spaces. So there's a striped area. It's 12 feet wide, which is more than a parking space. And we've done turning movements. It would be easy to pull in and out, and it's right near the entrance.
It would be a K-turn. It wouldn't be a million turns, just be a quick K-turn.
It would be like a parking space. You pull in, you'd be able to back out completely and pull away.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Brian Foster and I drive that big bug.
Sounds big.
Does anyone else have any questions for either Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Zugner? Mr. Monelnik, did I say it right? I don't know.
That's okay.
Do you have any questions?
I do have a few questions, Mr. Zugner. Would you mind sharing sheet 8 of your submitted plans?
Don't mind at all. One moment.
Okay. And if you don't mind zooming in right around the basin. I have some questions regarding what's shown on there that you can help me out with. All right. Could you identify the lines around there which represent the 100-year storm elevation?
So 100-year water surface elevation is at elevation 28.67.
Mhm.
And it's this contour, you can see is 28, and then there's a dashed with 2 dots line
Mhm.
that falls within this pond that would be the 100-year water surface elevation.
Okay. And if you travel down, looking directionally on this plan, north to south, I think in reality, west to east, and travel down towards Palmer Avenue and follow that line along towards the bottom, does that line not encroach upon Palmer Square property?
Well, this dashed line is entirely within
Okay.
the pond. There's a 29 contour, which is above that. And what we've done is we've ensured that we get drainage into these inlets and off of what's right now a low point that straddles the property. So I can't not connect that sort of 29 contour that's above it because it's on your property. I could fill it in if you wanted me to go on your property, but I can't do that. And so we've connected it and we've kept the 100-year water surface elevation below that spot shot on the property line.
All right. And then going back up to the basin, you show what appears to be, and I'm not an engineer, but to on top of the basin there, again, directionally as the plan is laid out, that's a berm up top that kind of bull noses.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then in between that, and then there's another berm on the bottom of the basin, and then a spillway in between, correct?
Correct.
There's no berm or artificial berm planned for the side of the basin facing Palmer Square. Is that correct?
Well, effectively there is. So again, it's sort of sometimes deceptive in contours. So this is elevation 30. This is elevation 30, the berms you've talked about. The property line is elevation 30. And then the spillway is at elevation 28.7.
So the property line itself is served, just correct me if I'm wrong, serves as the natural berm?
Well, we're not touching the contour. We're leaving that property line as it is, and then we excavate on our property. So essentially we're coming down onto our property. And then where you're looking at the contours, we then build up to match those elevations. And that's how we've created the pond.
Okay. With respect to the mounding study, understanding that there are no basements in the building directly next to it, that being that's Ambrose Court, approximately how many feet could there be an impact to a basement from the basin, if there were a basement?
Well, again, going back to what I was talking about with the board member before, this is really a 3-dimensional perspective, right? You would need to see where is a basement. So if a basement's above this groundwater elevation, then there's no impact to it, no matter how close or far it is. So it really has to be looked at as a 3-dimensional impact. And that's why I had talked about this 30 feet over the property line as sort of the limit of true impact. That's where it's multiple inches above existing. And beyond that, it's, an inch or a fraction of an inch, and only for a short ways, out to the 90 feet. So, when you say, could there be an impact? No, in my opinion. I think anything outside of that 30-foot line, there's no impact.
So 30 feet is around the line, you would say?
Is along the line, I would say.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions. I do have Mr. Murphy, who I understand is on to provide some testimony as well, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, we'll look again. I just looked for him. I didn't see him 2 seconds ago, but we'll look again.
Oh, he must be on because he's texting.
Is that just, is he just Brian? There he is. He raised his hand. Could you let, Allison, can you let the Brian with the raised hand in, please?
Just let
Thank
him
you,
in,
Brian.
Chairwoman.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Malenek, may I pull this plan down? Stop.
Oh yeah, my line of questioning is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, Mr. Murphy, you're still sworn in from the last time. You may ask whatever questions you have or make whatever statements you want.
Are you able to bring up the other plan?
My plan, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Do I have the ability to share? I do not.
I am giving you that ability right now.
Thank you.
Surely.
Mr. Murphy, you remain under oath. You understand that?
Yes.
And you were here and were able to listen to the testimony of Mr. Zugner just now?
Yes.
And you've had a chance to review all the plans that were resubmitted on May 10th in this application, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay, this is a plan which is the plan submitted sheet 8 of 18 by Mr. Zugner, and I assume these annotations are from you created?
Yes, since we can't be there to mark it up ourselves, this is.
Right. Okay. Marty, I have lost track. I don't know how you'd like me to mark this.
Yeah, Bonnie, do you know where we are on the exhibits?
I think this may be the 4th exhibit, but I'm
going to say 04, yeah.
But I'm not sure if we were using O or not.
We could just be safe and start with, just a higher number. 08 or something. You only had a few exhibits, right, Steve?
I'm fairly confident this is going to be 4. I just wasn't sure the letter if we were using O or not.
Yeah, I think we were using O.
Okay, so this will be 04.
We can put 04 and put today's date in parentheses if that helps.
That's good.
Okay. Mr. Murphy, can you provide your thoughts on the revisions to the plan that were made as well as the testimony that Mr. Zugner just gave?
Sure. Some of our comments were addressed in this revised plan. They added some additional drainage along that north end, but we still have 2 issues hanging out there, and they're kind of demonstrated by the plan that's before you. The blue line is really what the 100-year storm is. As Mr. Zugner indicated, that they have the elevation indicated within the basin. Then what happens is those inlets that are connected to the basin are lower than the 100-year flood. So when it does hit that 100-year flood, it would actually come up into those basins, which in itself isn't an issue. The problem is I believe it's still coming onto our property near that Palmer Avenue portion of the property. The other issue is the top of berm. It does not wrap around the north side of the property. You can see that's an elevation of roughly 30.5 is the top of berm. So even if we just follow the 30 contour, you see it ends on basically bullnoses at the end of our property on one side and dies into the building on the other. And you can see the existing contour that's dashed that comes in and touches the north end of the property and comes back out. That is elevation 30. So that it's not really wrapping around and containing the basin on their site. So that's really the issue, that just those 2 issues. The red line is really basically what's coming out as top of berm. As you can see, it comes substantially onto the property. The problem I have is if they do just say, okay, we're just going to berm that up and make it a 30 along our property line, it's going to create a low point along our property line and trap water there. So it's just something that has to be addressed.
Can you speak to what the stormwater regulations say regarding these 2 issues?
Sure, it's covered by DP and dam safety, and also within the RSIS section NJAC 5:21 7.8 D David for basically it gets into really it's a minimum of 6 feet, which they have where they do have the berm, they have 6 feet, but then obviously that they don't have it on the north side of the property, on the shared property line, where that berm just kind of dies off. So that, you're required to have a berm, that they partially provided one, but it's really kind of coming up along our property, which is really the issue. It needs to be contained on their property.
In your opinion, this stormwater plan as designed may result in spillover onto the Palmer Square property?
Yeah, the 100-year, I believe it will on that corner by Palmer, for sure. And just going by the regulations with the top of berm should be contained on their property as part of their basin and their drainage structure, and it's not. It's coming onto our property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Sure.
Madam Chair, Bob Euro. Mr. Murphy, just do you have any survey data where you're other than the spot grade of 30.6 in between the one building and the property line? do you have any data as to what the elevations are along those two townhouse structures?
No, I'm looking at the existing contour that they provided there. That's the 30 contour. You can see it's roughly in between, midway in between our basin, I mean, their basin and our building.
Right, so, but wouldn't that 30 contour then continue in I guess it's a westerly direction and cut right through your orange line at the top of the page? I mean,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, the 30.5. I agree with your just testimony of the 100-year storm impacting the property down around Palmer Avenue. And as Mr. Zugner mentioned, he's tying in the grades as he should. And, he can possibly rectify that if he can get permission from the adjoining property to do a little bit of minor grading over there to keep everything on the applicant's property.
Yeah, it's lowering the 100 years.
With regards to the top of the basin, yes, I identified that, he does provide a berm at that westerly side where the outfall is. But normally we just, you tie back into your contours where he has it, and he tied in that 30 contour right at the property line. And, everything else just flows overland. So Madam Chair, I'm going to have to research that section he just quoted, just to get a pure definition of what's considered the berm for the detention basin. But I see the design as proposed adequate for what Mr. Zugner testified to. And again, there is a minor, if you zoom out a little bit so that you can see the blue line at the bottom of the page, there is a minor,
Correct.
impact to the adjoining property with the 100-year storm that, Mr. Zugner could potentially look at, if he gets permission of the adjoining property to do some work over there.
Yeah, I've just never had a top of berm be part of someone else's property. That's my bigger issue.
Yeah, but then the question is, how far do you chase that berm? If it's beyond the 100-year elevation.
Well, the berm is required to be a foot above the 100-year going through the. So that, I think, ran that calculation. I think it was like, the spillway's 28.7. I think it came up to like 28.9. It wasn't much above that, a couple tenths. So you throw at least a foot above that, so that's 29.7, and I don't think you have that. You don't have that around the entire basin.
And by the way, Mr. Euro, that regulation is section 5:21-7.8 D6, which provides that the minimum elevation at the top of the settled embankment shall be 1 foot above the water surface.
Again, Madam Chair, I'll have to review that section.
Sure.
See, I mean, I know you were throwing a lot of numbers out, but 28.7 and 30 is 1.3 difference, isn't it? 1.5 actually, if it's by inches.
29.7 is the minimum, I believe, that they would have to be for the top of berm. They have 30.5 as the top of berm, and either way, I think it's coming onto our property.
Again, it's 30.5 in that isolated area, but if it's only 1 foot above the 100-year storm, then they only need to maintain that 29.7. 100-year water surface is 28.67. So, in that isolated area where the 30 contour is on the property, they meet that 1 foot. As you run east and west, have to do a little bit of interpolation to see where that would fall.
Yeah, the foot measured from the 100-year flowing through the spillway, so it comes up to roughly 29.7 based off the calculations.
Okay, Mr. Zugner, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I just have 1 or 2 questions before we bring Louis back,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Sure, Mr. Zimmerman. Do you want this screen still up, or do you want to?
That's fine. You can leave it up. That's fine. Mr. Murphy, as part of your review of the application, did you take a look at the NJDEP freshwater wetlands permit and transition area waiver averaging plan dated February 10th, 2020?
Yes,
Okay. And that permit says on page, it doesn't have a page. Page 4, sorry. Under stormwater conditions number 2, the department has determined that this project meets the requirements of the stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8. Do you recall that?
yes,
Okay. So DEP looked at all of the stormwater regulations and determined that this project complied from their point of view. Did they not?
yes. And yet they still missed that the 100-year flood was coming on the property much more than it was since they addressed some of that issue. So just because they have the permit doesn't mean that they didn't miss anything.
So DEP missed it.
Yes.
Yeah, at this point, I would like to recall Mr. Zugner and ask him to respond to the 2 points that Mr. Murphy made.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. I think what I would like to say a little bit here is that talking about the top of this berm and the freeboard is a little bit misleading by drawing this orange line. The 100-year water surface elevation is shown, it's in the pond. And then it spills out the spillway. At no time is the 100-year storm going off or out of this basin onto the neighboring property. The fact that we create a berm elevation and then try and chase that across the neighboring property makes no sense. We're below the neighboring property. We're trying to get water into our basin. We've done exactly what we're supposed to do here to get this water from the neighboring property to the north into this basin. Changing it does not make sense. And then when we go further down where we've created this combination of drains and swales to capture water and get it into the basin, yes, in the 100-year storm, which remember, that's Hurricane Sandy, those little areas would fill back up with water. But based on our spot shots, it does not cross the property line. So I think that the gentleman is incorrect on both points. All of the 100-year waters, all of that storm is contained on our property, in our basin. We meet all the rules. The berm is designed properly. We capture drainage from the north so that it comes onto our property. It is not prevented from getting onto our property where if we had built up or created or changed berms, we would cause the neighbor problems. So again, our design is proper and correct.
Thank you. Does anybody need this screen still? Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Manalik?
Could we possibly get some shots along that area where, especially along Palmer, where I think the water is coming on the property? Because there's one spot grade up. So I'm not sure how anyone really knows what's happening there.
I'm not sure if that's a question to me or to Mr. Zimmerman.
Not to me.
Again, I mean, to go out and do more survey work for a matter of inches here, we have spot shots. We believe our design is correct. So we'll leave it at that.
Only one spot shot, kind of the issue. And it looks like it's coming onto the property based off where the contour.
Mr. Murphy, have you done any testing yourself?
No, I'm relying on the plans that are provided.
I'm just curious. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open to the public. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. Please remember that the questions are limited to the testimony that was given here this evening, which is about the ambulance turnaround and the Mounding study. For some reason, I'm not seeing hands up, which I did last time. Allison?
Do not see any hands at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. So at this time, we will close the public portion for questions and comments on these two issues, and the applicant will return on with no further notice on, what's the date, Bonnie? You're muted. June.
Go ahead, Sadie. June 15.
So
I am not available that evening.
I don't think it's June 15. I think it's June 22.
I am available that evening.
That's a township meeting, I think.
June 15 is your township meeting?
22nd, I think. Let me just double check.
Aren't we we're the second and, aren't we the second and fourth Tuesdays?
Yeah, so we would be the 8th, which was canceled. So we would be then the 22nd in June.
We only scheduled one for June, one for July, one for August.
Okay, so that's June 15th?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think, didn't you say 8th to the 22nd?
Yeah,
No,
no,
that's the planning board. That's the township committee, I'm sorry.
You see, right.
Well, I have.
Mrs. Zimmerman, you're not available that night? Or who's not available?
No, it was,
Next would be July 20.
Who does it? Is June 15th okay for you or no?
It is not for me.
Steve, is there anybody in your office that could cover it?
Well, this is the important part. This is where I'd be concluding and providing a closing argument on what we've done over 4 hearings. I'd have to bring somebody up on that. And I just, I did not know about the letter you sent until an hour, when it was presented an hour ago. So I had every indication that this was going to be the final meeting. So I apologize, but I have another meeting that night.
Would it be unusual for you to make your closing statement now?
Yeah, I would not want to do that. I'd want to wait to see what transpires with the elevators. But I can potentially, if it has to be that night, I can see if somebody can cover the other meeting. But
Okay, so why don't we move it to June 15th, and if we have to, we can schedule a special on maybe June 29th.
Okay, but for now, it's being carried to June 15.
Yes,
without
because
further
it's already
notice.
advertised, otherwise we'll have to advertise June 29th.
Yeah.
And Steve will see if somebody can cover his other.
I'll let you know within days. I won't prolong it. So
That's great, thank you, I appreciate that. So this is being, yes?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, I would not be available on the 29th. I'm going to be in California.
Okie dokie. All right, so let's hope Steve can get somebody to cover him on the 15th. So we will adjourn this application until June 15th without any further notice.
7 p.m.
I'm sorry?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. The issue to be discussed will be the elevator. And so I need a motion to
Motion.
Who's
Ron. All in favor? That was Ron and Brian, Bonnie.
Ron and Brian. Also, there will be new login information for that night.
Yes, so
Yeah.
watch for emails. Those of you that are watching from afar, please watch the website, and will be new Zoom information for that. And thank you, gentlemen. So we moved it. So we motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. I know, and hold on. I need to. Okay. So thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you. Hopefully, see you all back here on June 15th. A couple of things. We will be able to go into executive session. Sharon Roundtree set it up for us. So if you would, she sent us all an email. So check your email for that. But before we close, do we have any report from the planner? Nothing? Engineer, any report? Attorney, you're going to give us your report in executive session.
All right.
Okay. So we will not be coming back out after executive session for those of you that are still on. So this will be the end of the planning board meeting for the public tonight. Thank you all for attending. Okay. So we're going to leave here, go into your email. There should be a new link.